Hello and welcome. It's Bev, and today my special guest is Sharon Falchuk. And Sharon has something profound to share with you today. Her journey is amazing. And so without a further ado, Sharon, welcome to you.
Thank you so much, Bev. I'm so happy to be here. It's really an honor.
So Sharon, let's talk about you and what it is that you do.
Sure. So I am a functional medicine certified health coach. So basically what that means is that I help people on their wellness journey. That could be someone who's in full-blown, crisis mode, who's gotten a diagnosis and is not well, or it can just be someone who knows they don't quite feel right and that there's better for them in life. And so I kind of try to help them parse that out and figure that out.
Beautiful. And let's talk about your well-being journey. Tell us, how did you also, because often what we need to learn, we actually study, don't we?
So true. So true. Yeah, that's definitely my story. So really to go all the way back from a child, I really didn't feel well most of my life. So I had tons of digestive issues mostly, and then just weird aches and pains and kind of neurological stuff. So weird stuff with my vision and migraines when I was a second grader, which is not normal. And at the time, nobody knew what was going on with me. The times that my parents would take me to the doctor would say she must have caught a virus. And it just kind of went on like that for my whole life until I had my son. And then within 2 years, I literally started to have all these weird symptoms until I was bedridden and couldn't function at all. And so that kind of started also with digestive issues. I lost 25 pounds in 4 weeks. And I was at a really critical point where I wasn't sure if I was going to live or not. And so I live in the Boston area. And so this is sort of known as the Mecca of healthcare. And I saw over 15 doctors here, and all of them said, there's nothing wrong with you. Here's some anxiety medication. You must have anxiety. You're just a nervous and stressed out mom of a toddler. And so I was really dismissed, and in a lot of cases, actually, what I would call abused by the medical profession, medical industry. So I ended up finding a doctor who was sort of off the grid. She doesn't take insurance and all that because she really specializes in taking care of people with mystery illnesses, what some people would call mystery illnesses. And so she tested me for a few things. And it came back that I did have Lyme disease and candida overgrowth in my gut, and it actually was systemic at that point. And then some other things going on, some co-infections for people who are, well-versed in tick diseases. There's a lot of other things on top of Lyme that can come with a tick bite. So it's interesting because my blood work showed that I had a new infection and an old infection. So that kind of helped me connect the dots of my childhood issues because I was born on Long Island in New York. And in the 80s, we had ticks on us all the time and just really didn't think much of it back then. So so it was good to have an answer, but as a lot of people know, having an answer isn't everything, because then that's sort of when, oh no, what do I do now happens. And for me, I've always been a really hypersensitive person. And so my doctor, the only thing she did really was antibiotics. And I tried that. And within 7 days, I was in head to toe hives. My mouth started to swell. That's when I knew I really couldn't go on with it, is when my mouth started to get swollen. And I had to stop and go on Benadryl and try to bring that reaction down. And so, since that was the way she knew to treat Lyme, and I went to her and said, well, what do we do now? And she's like, we're in real trouble now. And that was one of the most hopeless days on my journey, because it was also the day she informed me that since I probably did have Lyme from childhood, that I could have passed it to my son so I really, literally, Bev, don't even know how I drove home that day. Like, I don't even remember the drive. I was hysterical. I was a mess, and feeling very hopeless at that point. So as things would happen, I feel like when you hit rock bottom and you kind of keep yourself open, and I'm a very spiritual person, I, prayed a lot. And once I really kind of surrendered and opened myself up, it seemed like one step after the other started to present itself. And I got a phone call from my cousin's husband who said, I know an herbalist who actually is 15 minutes from you, and he has Lyme disease himself and specializes in treating people with Lyme. So that's when, I went and saw him and got on an herbal protocol to treat the Lyme. But, backing up a few months before that, when I didn't have answers and I was so sick, I did my own research and had already gone to changing my diet, going gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, and doing, literally every moment that I could be awake and have my eyes open and be thinking straight. Because as some people with chronic illness know, like, you can't always read a sentence and make sense of it. So when I could, I would spend all of my time researching. So I did kind of put together for myself that diet would be helpful. I started to see an acupuncturist. I started to go to all these alternative things because nobody in mainstream medicine was helping me. So thankfully I did have some of that in place when I met the herbalist, but really then it kind of took off from there.
Yeah. Wow. And so that journey, is it a continuing journey? You still needing to support yourself with herbs and other strategies?
Yeah. So, I kind of think that, being a sensitive person, again, I don't know if that would have been the case whether I had Lyme disease or not. Some of us it's kind of part of my whole thing in health coaching, actually, is this whole idea of that there are orchid people. So there are just some people who need extra care in life. Some people are lower energy, some people, there's all sorts of reasons for it. So, Lyme or not, I think I'm the type of person who needs to slow down in life, who needs extra time to do things, who needs extra care. So I don't take the herbs anymore. I did that for 2.5 years. So I weaned myself off from the herbs. I still maintain the diet. That is something that I really don't compromise on. And then as far as like maintenance goes, I do still see like my acupuncturist probably once a month or twice a month. And it's just, I went from it literally being my full-time job to now being more like of a part-time job. And it was, me getting so well that I was able to go back to school and get this certification in functional medicine. So, I never foresaw that I would have my life back in any way, shape, or form. And the fact that I could learn and, finish a program and now have a career that I feel was really meant to be, that's kind of, I think, why this all happened, is amazing. So I do have to, take good care of myself, but I'm nowhere near the level of, no medication, and I don't have to do any of that anymore.
That's wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
So pleased for you.
Thank you.
So Sharon, it's been a difficult time, but what happened on the journey that you did not expect?
So I think the biggest thing for me was learning how powerful the mind is. It can be one of these things when you have chronic illness, and especially when you're turned away a lot by doctors and they do say things to you like it's all in your head or you're making this up or whatever. You can be really offended to think that this is something in my head, it kind of almost becomes you push it away. But what I realized is that it's not all in my head, but my head can help me. You know what I mean? Is that I just kind of surrounded myself with positive examples of people who had used their minds to heal. And I actually did a program called the Dynamic Neural Retraining System to kind of try to remap my brain. And because I learned that your body and your brain, when there's an injury or there's an assault of some sort, whether that's a bacterial infection like Lyme, whether that's a chemical exposure like mold toxicity or whatever it happens to be, your body can sort of get on top of it and kind of have it in control or heal from it. But your brain can still be thinking that there's a threat going on in your body. It can be locked in that fight or flight mode. So really working on changing my mind, because my anxiety, I had such severe anxiety that just sort of ruled my life to a small degree before I got sick. But then it was like the secondary Lyme infection it took over. And what it did to my gut, we know the gut-brain connection there. My anxiety was really out of control for a little while. So working on remapping my brain and working with, I also did EMDR, which is like it's another kind of therapy, which I can explain if you're interested. But just these tools to kind of change my thinking, change my beliefs, change my outlook on how things were going to turn out for me. I was just shocked that I could move the needle on my anxiety to where I don't really have anxiety anymore. Not to any sort of, it doesn't disrupt my life in any way. So the biggest thing I learned is the power of mind-body connection, which is why I've gone to certain trainings and courses to have that be sort of one of the biggest tools I use in the work that I do with people.
Yeah. And that's the premise of my book, Hope in a Dark Tunnel, is that whilst, I'm not talking about curing you from whatever ails you, but I'm talking about being well inside of yourself, mentally resilient, emotionally resilient, and supporting yourself in the best way possible. So thank you for confirming that
yes,
that's a strategy.
It's true.
So let's talk about the strategies that allowed you to be resilient, both while you were ill and now that you deploy.
Sure. So again, number one, I would say is diet. That really, like I said, has been a constant for me. And there have been a few times that I've tried to maybe go outside of that, and I do see the difference. I don't do it very often, but definitely my keeping a healthy diet is huge for my wellness and my resilience. And then also definitely mind-body medicine techniques. I really like to use one of my favorites, and I encourage everybody to find what works for them because it's different for everybody. But one of my favorites is guided imagery and just using my mind to envision what I really do want, even when I'm in pain or I'm having a symptom of some sort, really using my mind to kind of take me away from that or to refocus and to have a different point of view. So guided imagery is something that it's really great because once you kind of get the hang of it, you can employ it, you can bring it out in any setting, anywhere you are, whether you're traveling or home, it doesn't, you can use it anywhere. And, I do really believe in using alternative tools. So I love acupuncture. I love chiropractic. I love, I've kind of taken on the idea that I'm learning these tools and trying them out for my clients. So I'll go try anything. Just in this last year, no, I really will. Like for the longest time, as you may be able to relate to, is you do it out of survival. And now it's more that I do it out of, because I'm so curious and I just want to see, how it works. It's so, and, I'm so thankful I'm able to say that I've kind of crossed over from being desperate and trying everything and survival mode to now just being like, oh, I just want to find out the connection for why these things work in the body or for the mind or, so yeah, I'll try anything. I just did myofunctional therapy this past year, pelvic floor therapy. I've tried everything. So yeah, I think it's important to see wellness as sort of a menu that you get to choose, or a buffet that you kind of get to go and try something and see if it works for you. And if not, great, that may work for somebody else. And then you kind of figure out what else. But it is that, the resiliency, I think, comes from the mindset. And it's that life is fluid. We change by the hour in the day. We change by the seasons. We're always changing. So you have to be accepting that we're not in control and that you have the tools you need no matter what comes your way, because life is still going to happen. But it's shifting from life happening to you knowing that whatever happens, you're going to be able to handle it.
Yeah, I agree with that, because when you are of that mindset, which I was, is that I felt safer controlling my world. And so exactly. I was overscheduled, oversubscribed, all of these things. And it actually sucked the joy out of my life because, I was so focused on the plan that, I wasn't living, so I understand exactly what you're saying around that. So that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And Sharon, so how do you integrate your health, your life, as a mum, as a partner, your business? How do you integrate those things?
Yeah, I have to say it's definitely, I'm still in the learning process on that one. And I do find that you have to be willing to have an open mind with it, because you can get so stuck in ruts. Like I find myself, especially I think when you're coming from chronic illness, where you feel like you have to control every little thing to kind of stay on that fine line of surviving and getting through each day. So again, I've really had to shift out of that. I don't have to work so hard anymore at those things, to now being able to reallocate my time and energy to my job and to, I was always unbalanced before. I would say, like, once I had a child, literally like 99% of me went into trying to protect him and do everything perfectly for him and be the perfect mother, because I just loved him so much and was so concerned about his well-being, that I was way out of balance right before I got sick, which is really no coincidence, I don't think. So getting sick really taught me that I need to I need to give some here, give some there. So now, I'm really a lot better about stepping away from one thing to give my energy to another. So to me, it's just about being aware. I feel like I before was just sort of sailing along autopilot and doing what I had to do to stay alive and make it through. And now it's like, oh no, I can be intentional about what I do each day. Like I can start my day and be like, I will give all my attention until my son goes to school. Then I switch over to, giving my attention to my work or socializing or supporting a friend or whatever that happens to be. And then nighttime rolls around. It's more like time for my partner and my son until he goes to bed. And then, it's just really about being intentional and being aware, I think, because I still catch myself. I do it, especially with my new job, because it's new for me and I'm really overly excited about helping so many people and getting so much done in the day that then I find myself like, oh, hours have gone by and I'm like, doing social media or I'm whatever. And so now I'm really learning, okay, don't go so extreme, because I did before I got sick tended to be like an all or nothing person. Like I either threw everything into it or I didn't do anything. And that also was not healthy for me. So now it's about, catching myself. Now you need to shift focus and do something else now. So
yeah, and
it's definitely a learning process.
It is certainly.
Yeah.
And I think, isn't that life? It's a learning process. So
yeah,
why should it be different in our sort of little corner of the globe,
True.
Let's talk about your business and tell me how you support women.
Sure. So I'm really passionate about supporting women, because I do feel like a lot of women are passed off in the medical world. I feel like in mainstream medicine, a lot of it is kind of passed off as you're hormonal or you're, just a woman. And, I'm starting to learn the concrete reasons why women are kind of more susceptible or more prone to some of these illnesses. There are even genes. I have a gene that predisposes me more to things like Lyme and MS and neurodegenerative diseases. And it's important to know those things, because then, you can take steps to kind of, assure yourself that that's not the path you're going to go down, because genes don't equal your destiny. Thankfully, we know that now, which is a beautiful thing. So I really want to get out there and let women know, like, there's real reasons that we get more of these sort of mystery illnesses. That doesn't make you crazy. That doesn't make you in any way flawed. It just means we have to get in there and do some things a little more strategically than maybe men do. And the other way that I really want to support women is after they have children. I feel like it's really a gap right now when you're in the hospital and you give birth, and they maybe high level say like, oh, they say to your husband or your family, keep an eye out for these telltale things that would signify, postpartum depression. Nowhere did anybody talk about postpartum anxiety or any of the other manifestations that can happen, which is what happened to me. I didn't have the depression piece. I had the anxiety piece. So I was like, didn't want anyone touching my son. I just didn't want anybody around him. I was so afraid for his safety at all times that I was just like, I would stay up and just watch him sleep, basically. And nobody explained to me that I wasn't alone in that. So I just felt very like weird and flawed. And I just sort of isolated myself because I felt so strange for feeling that way. And then the other piece is really physical after you give birth. Like I mentioned, I've been trying pelvic floor physical therapy and working with this practitioner to then try to get the message out in a broader way to women that you really should go have physical therapy after you have a baby, because it really throws off your whole pelvic floor and your whole core. I didn't even know your pelvic floor was part of your core until I started seeing this brilliant practitioner. So again, it's just, I think we women have been so cut off from, you're supposed to have the baby, move on, do what you're supposed to do. And you really need to, I don't want to say like childbirth is like war, but I remember just being sort of like traumatized by the experience of birth, going through sort of a PTSD of what did my body just do? What did it go through? The pain, the soreness afterwards. And just, I really want to educate women to know you need to take care of yourself in that period of time. Or I can't even tell you the number of women who have a baby and then within a year or two have an illness, whether it's thyroid issues and that's another thing. I know my thyroid must have been totally messed up after I had my son, because I had classic thyroid symptoms. Nobody checked my thyroid. I went for the postpartum checkups. Nobody did blood work. Nobody checked. And I said, I don't feel right. But like, number one, women should be having their thyroids checked after they have a baby. So that's one of the things that gets thrown off. Your microbiome gets thrown off after you have a baby. I mean, there's so many things. And women are just expected to go just take care of this baby and just go on with life. And so that's how I want to support women, is by educating them to take good care of themselves, especially after having a baby.
Yeah, and that's so, I love what you're saying there, Sharon, because if you think of it, yes, it is as nature intended.
Yes.
The thing is that we are living in a different time. There are so many demands on us, both men and women. It is just a fast pace of this world. And trying to care for an infant, I can remember saying nobody gave me a manual.
Yeah.
Because I had read as many books as I could. But the reality of a baby, I had two babies with terrible allergies for the first 2 years. And navigating that was incredibly stressful. But because I was still in that mother perfection, I was like trying to be Mother Teresa to my child.
Yeah.
And I wasn't taking care of myself. And I think that is what can happen that exacerbates what you're talking about. So, thank you for highlighting that.
Yeah, you have that predisposition that you don't know about that's sort of under there. And then you push yourself to the limit, and that just gives it an opportunity to come out. And, you can't predict, like you said, your children having allergies. My son was the same. He had, dairy and soy, and it was figuring that out with his digestive issues. And it's so stressful, and it's nothing that you can prepare for because it's so unknown. So you really have to be able to work with it in the moment and take good care of yourself. Yeah.
And like you say, my obviously my children are adults now, but in that time and I was in South Africa, there was no support that I knew of until I met a friend who said there's this new allergy society starting up. And one woman had taken it upon herself to educate the rest of us. And she had recipes, she had all sorts of things. Remember, we at that time didn't have the internet. And so, you just read what you could get on the bookshelf. You couldn't actually research stuff. So it was amazing. And I think also that's when I realized the power that each of us have to create a movement. And that for me is what I'm trying to do with my podcast, is create a movement to support others, so that all of us learn from one another and we create that space. So that's where I'm about. But I'm interested, Sharon, is what's next for you?
Yeah. So again, I just got my certification in January. So this is sort of all picking up fast for me, and I'm just trying to get my feet on the ground. But and this is my first podcast, so I'm really excited about that. But yeah, I want to get the word out. Everywhere I go, I was talking to somebody about this earlier today. I'm kind of an open book about what I've been through, because it is that feeling of I don't want anyone else to go through this alone. So as many people as I can reach is what I'm trying to do, whether that be through podcasts like this. And I've gone around to like the natural food stores in my area, and they've asked me to come in and do some talks. And I'm really just about kind of getting the word out to the masses, because I feel like, especially for sensitive people who have chronic illness, it's an even harder road to navigate because, like I was told, oh, we don't have any hope, we're really in trouble now because you can't do the one standard way that someone knew how to do something. And so I just want people to know they have options. I never prescribe or tell people what to do. That's out of my scope of practice. And it's out of, what I think is morally right, is to tell another person what to do. It's about helping people providing information and helping people make those decisions. I'm not anti-vaccine or pro-vaccine. I'm pro-educate yourself and you make the decision, with the information you have. So really, my plan is to get out and do talks, to work with people one-on-one, to do some groups. I'd like to do a stress reduction kind of group on the regular and do a book club, because there's so many books that have just changed my life that I've read along the way. And I'm also collaborating with, it was another student in my program who was in my cohort, and we're putting together an online program for people who have chronic pain. So she's a Feldenkrais practitioner, so she's got all the movement stuff down that she helps people with. And I'm sort of doing the mindset and meditation piece of that. So it's kind of like a body and brain program that people can sign up for online. And that's still in the beta phase. We're very much just in the beginning of that. So that's another way I want to help people, is kind of maybe doing some programs and maybe someday writing a book. I would really like to do that, about being sensitive in the world and trying to navigate that, So yeah, it's kind of exciting because I'm 38 and, I was sort of locked into a profession before I had my son that I was sort of like, I kind of can't, I enjoyed aspects of it. I was a recruiter for a consulting firm, and I liked the people aspect of it, but I didn't enjoy like the numbers. I've never been a numbers person and all that, the strategic planning kind of thing. So I never envisioned that at 38, I would have found my calling, my passion. And so that's just so exciting to me. I feel like I'm 20 again and in college, and, the world is my oyster kind of thing. So I'm just excited to help people because I know what it's like,
Yeah, absolutely. And so just to close our interview, I'd love to know then, what are your tips for living fabulously?
Sure. So first of all, I definitely believe in going out and finding, I've mentioned this, but mind, body medicine, anything, that can be journaling. It can be, there's so many options now. That's the great thing. And yoga, things like that, but really finding the thing that you love. Don't go out and do what some famous person is doing on their website. I don't believe in that. I believe in finding what really lights you up. If there's something that you're dreading to go do as a self-care thing, I kind of say don't do it, because again, I know the power of the mind-body connection. And if you do find things that make you happy and bring you joy, then that has such healing power. So I say, try to go out and do those things that bring you joy. Also, it's simple things. Again, everything I do is with a really gentle approach. So it's staying hydrated. I can't tell you the number of people when I have them they say, oh yeah, I drink enough water. I suggest they measure it out in the morning and see how much they really are drinking. Mm-hmm. And once they start drinking enough, they're shocked. I really wasn't drinking that much water. And when they do, like, so many of their symptoms literally resolve, whether that's headaches, body pain. Staying hydrated, I just can't say enough about how important that is. And it seems silly, but that's one way I live fabulously, is I keep myself hydrated. And sleep is another major one that I need to, that's again, another one that I'm constantly working on, because I do tend to stay up late at night. But when I do like yoga nidra, which is a bedtime kind of yoga, and really make a routine out of it, my sleep is so much better. So that's another thing to prioritize, is sleep, and just being kind to yourself. Again, being chronically ill, I made a joke before that it was a full-time job for me, but it can feel like that. It can feel like a grind. It can wear you down. And so really it's just about, okay, you want to stay up late tonight and watch that show? Give yourself a pass, because, life is hard with a chronic illness, and don't do it all the time, but just cut yourself some slack. you know, you didn't do everything quote unquote perfectly that you were supposed to do today for taking your medication or whatever that happens to be, is not to beat yourself up, just to really be, you know, compassionate towards yourself. I think that's one of the biggest ways we can go out and live fabulously, is by being kind, not just outwardly, but inwardly, and really being understanding towards ourselves.
Fabulous. Thank you for those tips.
Yeah.
And you can find Sharon at her website. It's intendedholisticwellness.com, and also on Facebook under the same name. And these will be in the show notes for you. And Sharon, thanks so much for being with me today.
Oh, thank you, Bev.
It's almost as if there's a mirror journey, and I love that we are both working towards supporting other women to make choices for themselves that actually have them being curious about what they find in front of themselves, you know, being open to possibility, really understanding that they have the opportunity to change their course. Yes. Whether they have the, you know, I think in my book I talk about, you know, naming the beast. We often in the Western medicine is so fixated on naming what's wrong with us, and we wait and we don't take any action. But there is a lot of action you can take, even if you don't have a diagnosis yet, to get yourself to that point of being a well-being, you know, so sort of, and I'm emphasizing being, because, you know, the illness doesn't define you. And what we want is for you, and I know that you would share this too, Sharon, is what we want for you is to be whole and integrated.
Yeah.
So that's what.
And happy.
Yes, exactly. And all those beautiful, because when you're feeling whole and integrated, happiness comes naturally.
Yeah.
Because you're in alignment with yourself, you know, you're actually working. And even though you may still be navigating your chronic illness, you will find it much easier to do. So thank you so much for being with me today.
You're so welcome. And just to know you're not alone. That's another thing I want everybody to know, is that when we all help each other out, it's so much easier.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks for being with me today.
Thank you, Bev.